Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching the empty space ahead through the main view screen. His hands gripped the railing as he studied the darkness between the stars. Today would change everything for the human race. Today they would meet their first alien visitors. The Titan was humanity's finest ship, built specifically for this moment. Every system had been tested and retested. Every crew member had trained for years. Jake had commanded warships before, but this mission was different. This was about peace, not war. "Captain, we're receiving the signal," said Lieutenant Amy Parker from her station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath. "The Zirathi ships are approaching the meeting point." Jake nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered, and suddenly space was no longer empty. 3 massive ships appeared, each one 10 times larger than the Titan. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, with smooth curves and gleaming metal that seemed to bend light around it. Jake had seen the photographs from the long-range scouts, but seeing them in person made his chest tight. "My God," whispered Dr. Ben Carter from behind him. The scientist had been quiet for most of the journey, but now his voice shook with wonder. "Look at the size of those things. The technology they must have." "Stay focused, Doctor," Jake said quietly. "Amy, signal the diplomatic shuttle that we're ready." The shuttle bay doors opened, and a small craft left the Titan. Inside was Ambassador Lisa Grant, Earth's most experienced diplomat. She had spent months preparing for this meeting, learning what little they knew about Zirathi culture. The aliens had made first contact 6 months ago, sending a simple message to Earth. "We wish to speak." Jake watched the shuttle approach the lead Zirathi ship. A docking bay opened in its side, smooth as silk. The human shuttle looked like a toy next to the alien vessel. "Captain," Amy said, "I'm reading some interesting energy signatures from those ships. Their weapon systems are, well, they're unlike anything we've ever seen." "Are they targeting us?" Jake asked. "No, sir. But if they were, I don't think our shields would help much." Jake kept his expression calm, but inside he felt cold. The Titan carried the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. If Amy was right, they might as well be throwing rocks. Dr. Carter moved to stand beside him. "This is incredible, Captain. We're about to learn so much about the universe. Think of what they could teach us about science, about technology." "Let's hope they want to teach," Jake replied. Hours passed. Jake paced the bridge while they waited for news from the diplomatic meeting. Finally, Amy's console beeped. "Incoming transmission from Ambassador Grant," she announced. "Put her through." Lisa Grant's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, and there was something in her eyes that Jake didn't like. "Captain Morrison, the initial meeting is complete. We're returning to the Titan." "How did it go, Ambassador?" Lisa paused for a moment too long. "We'll discuss it when I'm back aboard, Captain." The transmission ended, leaving Jake with a bad feeling in his stomach. When the shuttle docked, Jake met Lisa in the hangar bay. She stepped out looking older than when she had left. Her aide, a young man named Paul Davis, looked pale and shaken. "Walk with me, Captain," Lisa said quietly. They made their way to Jake's ready room, where Dr. Carter was already waiting. Lisa sat down heavily in a chair and rubbed her temples. "The Zirathi are not what we expected," she began. "They're intelligent, certainly. Their leader, War Prime Zektar, speaks perfect English. He's been studying our transmissions for decades." "War Prime?" Jake asked. "That's his title?" "It seems to be. The Zirathi don't have diplomats the way we do. They have war leaders and followers, that's it." Dr. Carter leaned forward. "What did they want to discuss?" Lisa looked at both men. "Our surrender." The room went quiet. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the chest. "Surrender?" he said finally. "They call it integration. The Zirathi Empire spans 47 star systems. They've been expanding for over 1,000 years. When they find a new species, they offer them a choice. Join the Empire willingly, or be forced to join. And if we refuse both options?" "Doctor?" Carter asked. Then they remove us from the equation entirely. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the 3 Zarathi ships hung in space like sleeping giants. What exactly do they want from us? Complete star charts of human space, full technical specifications of our ships and weapons, and a promise that humanity will accept Zarathi. Rule within 1 year. That's not going to happen, Jake said firmly. Lisa nodded. I told them as much. War Prime Zektar seemed amused. He said most species react the same way at first. He said we would learn. Dr. Carter was quiet for a long moment, then he asked, Did you learn anything about their technology? Their capabilities? Some. They've been watching us for decades, Ben. They know about our wars, our weapons, our tactics. Zektar mentioned specific battles from World War II. He talked about our military exercises like he had been there watching. Jake turned back to face them. We need to get this information to Earth immediately. Already done, Lisa said. I sent a coded transmission while we were talking. Admiral Frank Hayes should have it by now. They sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Jake spoke. What was your impression of them? As people, I mean. Lisa considered the question carefully. They're not evil, Captain. Not in the way we understand evil. They genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. To them, the universe is a dangerous place, and strong species have a duty to protect and guide weak ones. They see themselves as teachers. Teachers who rule through force, Jake pointed out. Yes. War Prime Zektar explained that every species goes through what he called the learning process. They resist at first, fight back, cause trouble, but eventually they see the benefits of joining the Empire. Peace, prosperity, protection. And the species that don't learn? Lisa's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He showed me pictures of dead worlds, Captain. Entire planets turned to glass. He called them failed students. Dr. Carter stood up suddenly. We have to warn Earth. We have to prepare. Prepare for what? Jake asked. You saw those ships? Ben, if they can do what the ambassador says, what chance do we have? Maybe none, Dr. Carter admitted. But we have to try. That's what makes us human. Jake looked out at the Zarathi ships again. They hadn't moved, hadn't shown any sign of hostility. They were just waiting, patient as death itself. Set course. For Earth, he ordered Amy over the comm. Maximum speed. As the Titan turned away from the meeting point, Jake wondered if they were running toward safety or toward the end of everything humanity had ever known. Behind them, the Zarathi ships watched them go, their alien crews already making plans for the lesson they would soon teach the stubborn humans. War Prime Zektar had given humanity 1 year to decide their fate. Jake had a feeling it wouldn't be nearly enough time. 6 months had passed since the meeting with the Zarathi. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Titan, reading reports from Earth. The news was not good. Half the world's leaders wanted to surrender before the aliens returned. The other half wanted to fight a war they couldn't win. Admiral Frank Hayes had tried to prepare Earth's defenses, but everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The human fleet had grown by 30%, but 30% of nothing was still nothing when facing ships that could destroy planets. Jake's door chimed. Come in, he called. Lieutenant Amy Parker entered, looking tired. She had been working double shifts, training new crews on the latest weapon systems. Captain, we're getting strange readings from the outer system sensors. Jake stood up immediately. Show me. They walked to the bridge together. Dr. Ben Carter was already there, staring at the displays with a worried expression. What are we looking at? Jake asked. Massive gravitational distortions near Mars, Amy replied. Something big is coming out of hyperspace. The main screen flickered, then showed the space around Mars. Empty red dirt and thin atmosphere, just as it had been for millions of years. Then the space above the planet began to twist and bend. Here they come, Dr. Carter whispered. Ships began appearing, not 3 this time, but hundreds. They came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. The smallest was twice the size of the Titan, The largest was like a floating city. "My God," Amy said. "Look at them all." Jake activated the ship's communication system. "All hands. This is the captain. Battle stations. This is not a drill." Alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Around them, the human defense fleet scrambled to respond. 47 ships in total, Earth's entire deep space navy. They looked like toys compared to the Zarathi armada. "Captain," Amy said, her voice tight with fear. "They're not heading for Earth. They're targeting the Mars colonies." Jake watched in horror as the alien ships moved toward the red planet. Mars had been humanity's greatest achievement outside Earth. 3 million people lived and worked there, mining the planet's resources and building a new world for their children. "Get me Admiral Hayes," Jake ordered. The Admiral appeared on screen moments later. He looked older than he had 6 months ago, his hair now completely gray. "I see them, Captain. We all see them." "What are your orders, sir?" Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "All ships move to intercept. We have to try." The human fleet began accelerating toward Mars, but they were too far away. The Zarathi had planned this perfectly. By the time the human ships arrived, it would be too late. "Captain," Dr. Carter said quietly, "they're not attacking military targets. They're hitting the civilian colonies first." Jake watched the tactical display as Zarathi weapons fired down at Mars. Entire cities disappeared in flashes of light. New Shanghai Station, home to 50,000 miners and their families, simply vanished. The dome cities that had taken decades to build were destroyed in seconds. "Why?" Amy asked. "Why start with civilians?" "Because they're not trying to defeat our military," Jake realized. "They're trying to break our spirit." The human fleet finally reached Mars, but the Zarathi were ready for them. The alien ships turned to face the approaching humans with what seemed like casual interest. Commander Rick Stone led the first attack wave in his fighter squadron. Jake watched on the tactical screen as the small human ships dove toward the massive alien vessels. Rick's voice came over the comm, calm and professional despite the impossible odds. "All fighters, this is Stone. Stay close and pick your targets. Make every shot count." The fighters opened fire with everything they had: missiles, plasma cannons, railgun rounds. The weapons struck the Zarathi shields and simply disappeared like raindrops hitting a window. Then the aliens fired back. Jake had never seen weapons like theirs. Beams of pure energy that cut through space itself, tearing apart anything in their path. Rick's squadron lasted less than 2 minutes. 24 of Earth's best pilots gone in an instant. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," Admiral Hayes ordered. But it was useless. The Zarathi weapons were too fast, too accurate, too powerful. The UES Manhattan, one of humanity's newest battleships, took a direct hit. Jake watched it break apart, its hull peeling away like paper. 3,000 crew members died in the explosion. "Captain," Amy said, her voice breaking, "we have to retreat. We can't do anything here." Jake wanted to argue, wanted to find some way to fight back. But she was right. The human fleet was being slaughtered, and their deaths wouldn't save anyone on Mars. "All remaining ships fall back to Earth," Admiral Hayes commanded. His own ship, the Yorktown, was burning and listing to one side. "We'll regroup and try again." But Jake knew there would be no trying again. Not like this. As the surviving human ships limped away from Mars, the Zarathi continued their work. They weren't just destroying the colonies now. They were landing troops, taking prisoners, studying human technology and tactics. 3 days later, Jake stood in Admiral Hayes' office on Luna Base. Through the window, Earth hung in space like a blue marble, beautiful and fragile. The Admiral looked like he had aged 10 years in the past week. "The final count from Mars is in," Hayes said quietly. 2.7 million dead, another 300,000 taken prisoner. Dr. Carter sat in the corner, studying captured alien technology. "I've been analyzing their weapons, Admiral. The energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen. It's not just that they're more powerful than ours, they work on completely different principles." "Can we defend against them?" Jake asked. "Not with anything we have now. Maybe not with anything we could build in the next 50 years. Colonel. Kate Murphy entered the room. She had been coordinating the evacuation of the outer colonies, trying to get civilians to safety before the Zarathi reached them. Her uniform was dirty and she looked exhausted. Admiral, we've received a transmission from the Zarathi commander, she said. War Prime Zektar wants to speak with Earth's leaders. Hayes nodded grimly. Put it through. The wall screen activated, showing the same alien leader they had met 6 months ago. War Prime Zektar looked exactly the same, calm and confident. Behind him, Jake could see human prisoners being led away in chains. People of Earth, Zektar began, his English perfect and cold. Your resistance was noted and found wanting. Your warriors fought bravely, but bravery without wisdom is merely waste. He gestured to something off-screen. We have studied your military exercises, your war games, your history. You understand tactics and strategy, but you do not understand war itself. War is not about honor or courage. War is about teaching lessons that must be learned. The screen showed footage from the Mars attack. Human ships exploding, cities burning, people running in panic. We gave you 1 year to accept our guidance, Zektar continued. That offer is now reduced to 6 months. During this time, you will experience what your ancestors called total war. We will teach you what it means to truly bleed. The transmission ended, leaving the room in silence. Dr. Carter looked up from his work. Admiral, there's something else. I've been studying the prisoners they took. They're not just holding them. They're experimenting on them, learning how humans react to pain, to fear, to hopelessness. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. They're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to break us completely. Admiral Hayes walked to the window and stared out at Earth. Then we'll have to learn not to break. Outside, space looked peaceful and empty. But Jake knew that somewhere out there, the Zarathi were preparing for the next lesson. And humanity was about to discover what it really meant to be prey. 1 year had passed since the Mars attack. Lieutenant Amy Parker crouched in the ruins of what used to be Denver, watching a Zarathi patrol through her rifle scope. Her uniform was torn and dirty, her face marked with scars from a close call with alien weapons 3 months ago. She looked nothing like the clean professional officer who had served on the Titan. The Zarathi had taken Earth 6 months ago. Not all of it, but enough. They controlled the major cities, the spaceports, the government centers. What was left of humanity hid in the mountains, the deserts, the deep forests. They had become ghosts in their own world. Amy shifted her position carefully. The patrol was moving closer to the school where 30 human children were hiding. The Zarathi didn't usually kill children, but they took them away to be educated in alien ways. No human child taken by the Zarathi had ever been seen again. Her radio crackled softly. Ghost Leader, this is Spider. I count 6 targets. No heavy weapons. Your call. Sergeant Tony Lewis was a good man. Before the invasion, he had been a military policeman who gave speeding tickets and broke up bar fights. Now he was one of the deadliest killers in the Colorado Resistance. War had a way of changing people. Hold position, Spider, Amy whispered back. Let them get closer to the trap. The trap was simple. A dead Zarathi soldier, rigged with explosives, lying in the middle of the street. The aliens were curious about their own dead. They would stop to examine the body. That's when the humans would strike. Amy had learned not to think too much about the ethics of it. The old rules of war didn't apply anymore. The Zarathi had made sure of that when they started, using human civilians as shields around their bases. The alien patrol stopped exactly where Amy knew they would. Their leader, a tall creature with blue skin and 4 arms, bent over the dead soldier. Amy could see its translator device glowing as it spoke to the others. Now, she whispered into her radio. The explosion lit up the street. When the smoke cleared, 4 of the 6 aliens were down. The remaining 2 raised their weapons and began firing wildly at the surrounding buildings. Amy put her first shot through the leader's head. Tony got the last one from his position across the street. It was over in seconds. Ghost Team, move in, Amy ordered. Collect their weapons and get out. 2 minutes. This was how humans fought now. Quick, dirty, deadly. They didn't hold ground or worry about military objectives. They just killed aliens wherever they found them and disappeared back into the shadows. Amy's team included Mary Ross, an engineer who had been designing bridges before the war. Now she built bombs that could take out Zerathi vehicles. There was also Pete Adams, a mechanic who had become an expert at sabotage. The old world had made these people into ordinary citizens. The war had made them into something else entirely. As they moved through the ruined city, Amy thought about Captain Morrison. She had no idea if he was still alive. After Earth fell, the remaining human fleet had scattered. Some ships had tried to fight and been destroyed. Others had simply vanished into deep space. The Resistance Cell's hideout was an old subway tunnel 20 feet underground. Commander Steve Johnson was waiting for them when they returned. He had been a desk officer before the invasion, pushing papers and planning logistics. Now he coordinated attacks across 3 states, and his eyes had the cold look of a man who had seen too much death. "Good work," he said as Amy's team unpacked the captured alien weapons. "How many civilians did we save?" 30 kids, maybe twice as many adults in the surrounding area, Amy replied. "But they'll send a bigger patrol tomorrow. We might have to relocate the shelter." Steve nodded. This was the constant struggle. Every victory came with a cost. Every dead alien meant more pressure on the civilians caught in between. Dr. Ben Carter emerged from the deeper tunnels carrying a tablet full of data. He looked thinner than before, his hair now completely gray. The war had been hardest on the scientists and intellectuals. They weren't built for this kind of life. "I've been analyzing the weapons we captured last week," he said. "I think I understand how their targeting systems work. If we can build the right kind of jamming device, we might be able to blind them temporarily." "How temporarily?" Steve asked. "Maybe 30 seconds. A minute at most." Steve smiled grimly. "That's long enough to kill them." This was what the Resistance had become. Engineers who built better bombs, mechanics who sabotaged alien equipment, teachers who trained children to be spies, ordinary people who had learned to think like killers. Amy walked deeper into the tunnel complex, where the civilians lived. Families crowded into small spaces trying to maintain some kind of normal life while the world burned above them. She found Nancy Kim reading to a group of children in one of the side chambers. Nancy had been a high school principal before the war. Now she ran the underground schools that taught human children how to survive in a world ruled by aliens. But her lessons weren't about math and science anymore. She taught them how to lie, how to steal, how to plant listening devices in alien installations. "Miss Amy," one of the children called out. It was a little girl named Emma, maybe 8 years old. Her parents had died in the first bombing of Chicago. "Hello, Emma," Amy said, kneeling down beside her. "What are you learning today?" "Miss Nancy is teaching us about alien weak spots," Emma said proudly. "Did you know they can't see very well in bright light? And their hearing is really sensitive, so loud noises hurt them." Amy looked at Nancy, who shrugged. "They need to know how to protect themselves," Nancy said quietly. "The old way of protecting children doesn't work anymore." That was the hardest part for Amy. Watching children lose their innocence because innocence had become a luxury humanity couldn't afford. Emma would never have a normal childhood. None of them would. Amy's radio buzzed. "All unit leaders to the command center," Steve's voice said. "Priority message from the outside." Amy made her way back to the command center, a cave that had been carved out of solid rock. Steve was standing in front of a large screen showing a map of North America. Red dots marked known Zerathi positions. Blue dots showed resistance cells. There were a lot more red dots than blue ones. "We've received a transmission from Admiral Hayes," Steve announced. "He's alive, and he's got news." The screen flickered, then showed the familiar face of the Admiral. He looked older and more tired, but he was definitely alive. Behind him, Amy could see the bridge of a ship she didn't recognize. "Resistance leaders," Hayes began. "This is Admiral Hayes speaking from the UES Defiance. I'm transmitting from the outer asteroid belt, where we've established a hidden base of operations. Amy felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. There was still a human fleet out there. We've been monitoring Zarathi communications, Hayes continued. They're having problems, not military problems. They're still much stronger than us, but they're confused by our tactics. Their reports back to their homeworld describe humans as unpredictable and irrational. Steve smiled. Good. Let them be confused. More importantly, Hayes said, we've learned something about Zarathi. Psychology. They've never faced an enemy that fights the way we do now. Every other species they've conquered eventually submitted when the cost became too high. But we're not submitting. We're adapting. The Admiral's expression grew more serious. The Zarathi are requesting reinforcements from their empire. That means we're making them nervous. But it also means we don't have much time. If more of their ships arrive, this war will be over. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in thoughtful silence. Dr. Carter spoke first. He's right about us adapting. Look at what we've become in just 1 year. We're not the same species that met them in space. Amy nodded. The humans hiding in these tunnels weren't the same people who had lived on the surface before the invasion. They were something new, something harder. The Zarathi had wanted to teach them about war, but the lesson hadn't gone the way the aliens expected. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky as another Zarathi ship passed overhead. But Amy wasn't afraid anymore. She was angry. And she was learning that anger could be just as powerful as fear, if you knew how to use it. 2 years after first contact, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of a ship that didn't exist. The UES Wraith had no official records, no registration, no home port. It was built from salvaged parts in hidden shipyards scattered across the asteroid belt. Like its crew, it had been shaped by war into something new and dangerous. Jake barely recognized himself in the mirror anymore. The clean-shaven officer who had first met the Zarathi was gone. In his place stood a man with cold eyes and scars across his face. His uniform was black now, without any insignia or rank markings. Ghost didn't need to advertise who they were. Captain, Lieutenant Amy Parker called from her station. She had followed him into the darkness, choosing to hunt aliens in space rather than hide in Earth's tunnels. We're picking up a Zarathi supply convoy, 3 ships lightly defended. Perfect, Jake said. The Wraith was designed for exactly this kind of work. Fast, quiet, and armed with weapons that the Zarathi had never seen before. Dr. Carter's research had finally paid off. The convoy appeared on the main screen. 3 large transport ships carrying supplies to the occupation forces on Earth. They were escorted by only 2 warships, both smaller than the massive vessels that had destroyed the human fleet at Mars. Take us in, Amy. Silent running. The Wraith moved like its name suggested, invisible to Zarathi sensors. Jake's crew had learned to think like predators. They didn't announce themselves or demand surrender. They simply struck from the darkness and disappeared. Weapons ready, Captain, reported Chief Gunner Linda Gray. She had been a kindergarten teacher before the war. Now she could target alien ships with deadly precision while showing no emotion at all. Fire, Jake ordered. The new weapons Dr. Carter had designed didn't make the bright flashes of traditional human guns. They were based on captured Zarathi technology, but twisted into something the aliens had never imagined. Instead of clean energy beams, they fired concentrated bursts of radiation that ate through alien hulls like acid. The first transport ship died in seconds, its crew screaming over the radio as their ship dissolved around them. The second managed to get off a distress call before it too was consumed. The escorts tried to fight back, but they couldn't target what they couldn't see. All targets destroyed, Amy reported. No survivors. Jake nodded. 2 years ago, he would have felt sick at the thought of killing helpless transport crews. Now he felt nothing except satisfaction. The Zarathi had taught humans what total war meant. Humans had turned out to be excellent students. Set course for the rendezvous point, he ordered. Time to go home. Home was a hidden base built inside, a hollow asteroid invisible to alien sensors. Admiral Hayes had done the impossible, building a new human fleet from nothing. ships like the Wraith, crewed by people who had nothing left to lose. When they docked, Jake found the Admiral waiting for him in the command center. Hayes looked older but stronger somehow, as if the war had burned away everything soft and left only steel behind. "Good work, Captain," Hayes said. "That convoy was carrying medical supplies for their occupation forces. Without it, they'll have to pull resources from other areas." Jake studied the tactical display showing human-controlled space. It was still tiny compared to the Zarathi Empire, but it was growing. "Any word from the resistance cells on Earth?" "Colonel Murphy's people hit another alien base yesterday. They're getting bolder." Hayes smiled grimly. "The Zarathi are starting to use their own civilians as shields around their installations." That was new. The aliens had always prided themselves on their honor in warfare. The fact that they were copying human tactics meant something important. "They're learning from us," Jake realized. "Yes, but not fast enough. Dr. Carter has intercepted more communications from their homeworld. The Zarathi High Command is concerned about what they call human infection. Our way of fighting is spreading to other species in their empire." Jake felt a cold satisfaction at that news. The Zarathi had wanted to teach humanity about war. Instead, humanity was teaching the galaxy something new about survival. Dr. Carter entered the command center, carrying a datapad. He looked different, too, his gentle scientist's demeanor replaced by something harder. War had changed everyone. "Admiral, we've decoded the latest Zarathi transmission. They're bringing in fresh troops from their core worlds, soldiers who haven't fought humans before. They think their occupation forces have been contaminated by exposure to human tactics." "How many troops?" Hayes asked. 50,000. Plus, a new commander, someone called Battlemaster Krenthor. Jake had heard that name before. Krenthor was known throughout the Zarathi Empire as their most successful general. If he was coming to Earth, it meant the aliens were taking the human resistance seriously. "There's something else," Dr. Carter continued. "We intercepted a personal message from War Prime Zektar to the Zarathi High Command. He's requesting permission to use final measures against human population centers." The room went quiet. Final measures meant planet-killing weapons. The Zarathi were getting desperate enough to consider destroying Earth entirely, rather than continue fighting humans. Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Jake. "Captain, I have a special mission for you. We're going to end this war, but not the way anyone expects." 3 days later, Jake found himself leading a strike team through the ruins of Geneva. The old city had been the site of peace negotiations for generations. Now it was the headquarters of the Zarathi occupation forces, a symbol of alien power on Earth. With him were Amy Parker, now promoted to commander, and a team of volunteers from the resistance. They moved through the broken streets like shadows, avoiding alien patrols and automated defenses. Their target was War Prime Zektar himself. Not to capture him or negotiate with him. Those days were over. They were going to kill him, and they were going to make sure every Zarathi in the galaxy knew about it. The plan was simple and insane. Sergeant Tony Lewis, now leading the largest resistance cell in Europe, had discovered that Zektar held daily briefings in what used to be the United Nations building. The building was heavily defended, surrounded by force fields and automated weapons. But humans had learned to use their enemies' strengths against them. The Zarathi Honor Code prevented them from attacking clearly marked medical facilities, so the resistance had hidden their assault team in an ambulance, painted with medical symbols and carrying fake wounded. "Remember," Jake told his team as they approached the alien checkpoint, "we're not soldiers anymore, we're ghosts. We don't follow rules, we don't show mercy, and we don't leave witnesses." The Zarathi guards let them through without a second glance. Medical personnel were beneath their notice, not worth the attention of mighty warriors. Inside the building, Jake's team moved quickly and quietly. They had studied the building's layout for weeks, memorizing every corridor and room. When they reached the briefing room, Jake could hear Zektar's voice through the door, speaking to his officers in their alien language. Jake didn't hesitate. He kicked in the door and opened fire. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. War Prime Zektar, the alien who had conquered dozens of worlds, died with a look of complete shock on his face. He had never imagined that prey could become predators, as alarms began ringing throughout the building. Jake's team fought their way out. They left behind a message written in Zarathi symbols, painted in alien blood. Humans do not surrender. Humans do not break. Humans hunt. The message was broadcast across the galaxy within hours. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, the Zarathi Empire faced an enemy that frightened them. Not because humans were stronger or more advanced, but because humans had learned to become something worse than their conquerors. 2 months later, the Zarathi fleet began withdrawing from human space. They didn't announce their defeat or ask for terms. They simply left, warning other species to avoid the region of space controlled by the humans. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the rebuilt UES Titan, watching the last alien ships disappear into hyperspace. Beside him, Jake Morrison looked out at the stars with eyes that had seen too much. "It's over," Hayes said quietly. Jake nodded, but he didn't feel victorious. Humanity had won, but the cost had been everything they used to be. They were still human, but they were also something new, something that even aliens feared. Earth was free, but it was freedom bought with darkness. The question now was whether humanity could remember how to be civilized or if the war had changed them forever. In the depths of space, other alien empires received the Zarathi warning: avoid human space at all costs. Humans didn't just fight wars, they became war itself.